Welcome to this session on business responsibility reporting and challenges in deploying. As you all are aware, July 2011, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Government of India, has brought out National Voluntary Guidelines for Business Responsibility Practice. The businesses are supposed to be conducting themselves responsibly around 9 principles outlined in National Voluntary Guidelines. The guidelines also talked about how businesses can also report their business responsibility practice. SEBI went ahead and mandated that at least the top 100 listed on the exchanges, market capitalization wise, should follow and report the business responsibility performance. This comes to India as a little challenge because not many of the Indian corporations, except 40-50 of them, have been reporting their sustainability performance or business responsibility performance following variety of national and international guidelines, including the Global Reporting Initiative guidelines. Now, how to cope with it? SEBI has done it correctly. SEBI said that the top 100 guys at least should report business responsibility performance. Our panel here, which includes a number of corporations, which also includes advocates, those who have participated very actively in formulating national voluntary guidelines for business responsibility, and the thought leaders, are going to deliberate on the challenges in deploying business responsibility reporting in Indian corporations. I welcome all of you to join and enjoy the deliberations in the next 30 minutes.
I thank Mr. Ram Babu for inviting me and as well as the other esteemed panelists here to have a discussion on the subject of responsibility reporting, which has been mandated by SEBI. Although the first report is not yet out, I understand that there are a lot of questions being raised as to what to be reported, how to be reported, how it is going to be evaluated. Is it necessary to give the right type of information, or is the way something can be fudged? And if it is done so, will the auditors be able to point it out, or the stakeholders will be in a position to assess whether somebody is trying to do something which the regulator expects them to do, or is trying to, deviate from what has been mandated? All these questions have already started coming. And as a regulator, we are keeping our fingers crossed whether we have mandated the right thing, or some more discussions could have taken place so that better things could have been brought out. Because for anything which you begin, this type of questions will always emerge. And it is the first of its kind where such type of reporting is being sought from. Although some of the companies which are listed overseas, and because of these global benchmarks and other requirements, they have been filing such reports. But in India, we want to make it mandatory for all the companies, all the corporates who are in business. But to begin with, we want to do it in a phased manner. And these panelists are there to, take us forward on these various issues which are being already shown in the screen. Now, to begin with, why this type of reporting has been brought in India, what is the background behind it, that will be given by the panelist, Ms. Neha. Then after that, we will take one issue after the other so that these panelists will contribute. And after that, we will have a question and answer session so that we can have a healthy discussion on this topic. And with this remark, I welcome all the panelists, and I look forward, and also the audience, so that we all can have a good session. And it will be a learning exercise for the regulator as well. And I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me over here, and I'm really glad that I'm participating in this discussion because um, now it's a time for action, it's a time for implementation. First of all, let me congratulate you, Mr. Sundaresan and SEBI, for taking such a progressive step. And as you mentioned that when you begin, there are always more questions than answers. And rightly so, it is one of the very progressive steps taken by any regulator. So there are, I think, only a couple of such examples. One is in South Africa, Johannesburg, so where regulator came out and where Johannesburg has basically amended the listing criteria according to sustainability. So. But what I would like to do over here is, in 4 or 5 minutes, give you a perspective from the side of the government and how we are involved. I am working with GIZ, but also in a bilateral cooperation project with the Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs, which has been working on this issue for last 4 years in close consultation with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. So the national voluntary guidelines that I hope all of you are familiar with, are a product of this effort. I have served on the committee both for the national voluntary guidelines as well as the disclosures framework group, which brought out the framework MCA published on its website, and SEBI, in a very progressive and forward-looking step, endorsed and adopted and mandated the top 100 companies. And I hope that face-to-face commitment will translate into action, and all listed companies will be mandated to report. So why did MCA get into reporting? When we were formulating, and there are other panelists here who have been involved in the process of formulation of national voluntary guidelines in one way or the other, reporting and disclosure was one of the key things that the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, in one of our very first consultations, suggested that we must do it, but in a manner which is pragmatic, which is enabling, which is not, at this moment at least, indicators heavy, which is applicable to large businesses as well as small. And the intentions were two. As you know, that the guidelines themselves are voluntary. But if a business says that I am adhering to the guidelines, then reporting is mandatory. And reporting is also looked at in two ways. The ministry felt that first of all, it is an evidence of adoption of the guidelines. That is one thing. But reporting, as your AV just now suggested, that actually improves the performance of the business itself. So there are two sides of the requirement of reporting. One is the business side of it, and one is the public interest side of it. And I think both of these things are important to understand. The business side of it is, of course, better performance and responsible performance. I think this issue must have been taken up earlier, but I would not mind repeating the very one sentence that GRI always says: what you can measure, you can manage better, and what you can manage better, you can perform better, and then it finally translates into profits and competitiveness in the long term. This is very critical to understand from the business point of view. Second business imperative is the investment. Increasingly, not so much the Indian investors, but international investors looking into Asia are looking at this information to be reported, and where do they find it, what is the authentic source of information. So there is definitely that interest in international investors. The public side of it is, as I said, the accountability side of it, the provision of information, the public space side of it, which is important. But it also goes to having information in an aggregate manner at one source, which right now lies with the MCA, where any stakeholder can go onto the website and can acquire that information. The other thing which, I mean, of course, I will come to the issues, the challenges, what do you do with this information? But one of the very important things, again, in terms of growth, investment, and competitiveness is that right now, a lot of these things are, say, which company is doing it, and there remains islands of excellence, so there are 30, 40, 80 or whatever. But if you have information in one place, you can probably have a sector view of performance. And that sector view of performance is extremely important to have when we talk about growth and quality of growth. So that is the public interest point of view of it. So what are the issues right now? And you touched upon a few. And where is the government and the IICA together are sitting together and tackling those issues? And so I'm here more to listen, really, because all of these inputs are extremely critical in order to mainstream reporting. Now, mainstreaming business responsibility behavior is one thing, but what is the business case for reporting is quite another. Both of these things are linked, but do they form a seamless cycle, so to speak? And that is very important for us to understand. So quality of information will be also very important. So when the first reports come out, what do people really report? What is the quality of information? Second is, what do we do with that information? Who does what with that information is also important. So what is the role of IICA and MCA in assessing that information? And I do know that there are certain thoughts already that we will probably have at IICA a cell which actually would be looking into analysis of that information. Very rudimentary thoughts, but these are thoughts which are now we are gathering from our consultations like these. The third important aspect is that there needs to be one framework for reporting, at least to begin with. I mean, to have a framework for reporting and then to have one single framework of reporting is important. And I think in that sense, what SEBI has done is remarkable, that instead of coming out with certain other reporting framework, it actually leveraged upon the MCA reporting framework. And it's only a matter of time, and I hope it is, that MCA also notifies its own reporting framework. Then 800,000 registered companies will be obligated to report. So another question is taking that leap from 100 to a larger section of companies. Need for one framework is also important because Ministry of Environment and Forests recently released a concept paper on institutionalizing corporate environmental responsibility. And it refers to NVGs and it refers to the business responsibility. And it says now businesses must report. So that is also something coming from MOEF. Now, unless all of these efforts converge and synergize, I mean, synergy is an issue that we can take up, then again, I'll come to what is the role of regulator? I mean, it has been mandated, but now what? So what if the companies don't comply? What if you do not get the business responsibility reports? So all of these are questions, and we don't have answers yet, but these are very important questions for us to sit together, for IICA, for government, for SEBI, for businesses to sit together and to understand how do we move into the next stage of implementation of reporting. What do stock exchanges do? What is the cost of non-reporting? And also, what is the cost of reporting? We've been hearing that it always is an additional. I mean, my instinct says that perception sometimes is larger than reality. If businesses do understand the business case of it, then the costs are actually not too high as they're made out to be. And some experience with SMEs suggests so, though, however, we do not have great empirical evidence in saying what is the cost of reporting or reporting. The other thing is, I think, awareness and training. I think this is a very, very important issue, besides auditing, who audits the reports and how is that a thing. But awareness and training not only of businesses themselves, but also of regulators, also of stock exchanges, also of government agencies, because if you were to really make it mainstream activity, then I think we are at different stages of awareness, and there is training required. And I will stop my remarks over here. to basically understand a lot from other panelists and the audience and take this feedback and input back to the government and back to the IICA. Thank you.
Morning to all of you, and respected chairperson and my fellow panelists. And I'm very privileged to be among all of you, and would like to thank Dr. Ram Bambu and his team to organizing this, because as the first panelist already started with the framework, how it has already come out, and what is the genesis and why it was required, is a very, very appropriate topic today for in the corporate world. Before I just go into that, I just give a brief introduction. I work with ITC Limited, which practices the sustainability practices, believe in the triple bottom line performance for the last about decade or more. I actually lead the sustainability reporting efforts and other consultation with the stakeholders, internal as well as external. So it is the right platform for me to actually at least raise these challenges, as you rightly said. Although we are practicing many of these practices for the last so many years, there are challenges, no doubt. Every business, every day, it actually facing these challenges, and we come out with that. Before going into that, with due respect to all the stakeholders who are involved in the development of NVG, as well as then later on it is mandating as from SAB. What we believe in, actually, what gets mandated, there is always a tendency to find, lesser implementation in the true sense. Most of the time, when I also discuss with the various other corporates, everybody talks about reports. But reporting is only an outcome, or reporting is only a incentive which comes out. The focus should be on the performance. So many times what happens when you actually bound by certain requirements, you tend to become a compliance oriented. When organizations start actually going towards the compliance orient, then you actually go into the tick box approach and somehow manage to, okay, I have completed this. This actually hampers your innovation. Unless organizations do not have innovation, you will not be able to improve performance. Although I very much in line with SEBI's direction that, okay, as a starting point, we need to start. It's a good direction with good intentions. And that is the reason probably it has been mandated with the 100 most market cap organizations to start with. But if you look at the trend of sustainability reporting in India over the last about a decade or old, you see how many major corporates have really followed certain frameworks and come out with the reports. Unless the organization has got a very strong conviction that it will give the intended outcome, at least on a long run. Because it's what is happening today. The organizations have to be recognized. Organizations have to be rewarded or incentivized the way in which they follow the sustainability practices. I just give an example that, for example, if you are making a product, you do lots of efforts in terms of sustainability initiatives, in terms of looking into all your stakeholders and taking care of that. Definitely there is a short-term initial cost which is associated with that. But when you come to the marketplace, you have to really compete with at the same price or same levels with the similar organization outside. So there actually, the mandating agencies, the regulatory agencies also have a major role to play in terms of how do you really, recognize or reward. I'm not saying only from an incentive point of view. This business responsibility reporting framework, maybe after a certain time, should use the organizations to actually more and more organizations to come in for reporting. If you become a compliance oriented, it actually hampers that more and more people to come in actually reporting. It should give the benefit to the people, that the organization to think, okay, I'm going to get benefit out of that. I would definitely, as a good cause, I would go on building up that. Having said that, now we need to actually go reporting on business responsibility reporting, no doubt. We would definitely follow that because since we are practicing GRI's framework. But there are 2-3 issues which are very, very pertinent, which would be definitely going to be suffered, or it's going to be an issue with other corporates also. Certain principles talks about bringing business responsibility reporting for the entire value chain. Today, in Indian context, the value chain concept is very good from a European context as well as or from other contexts where systems are well established. Even various value chain members, whether you take the case of franchisees, whether you take the case of your transporters, whether you take the case of suppliers, things are all well established. You have the relevant information, data, the quality of information, all are in place for you to actually take them along with you. Today, I can give one example. We have done a couple of life cycle assessment because life cycle assessment has to be used actually to arrive at how at the various value chain members in terms of maybe your energy utilization or material efficiency or water consumption, any of those, you need to know how much is really your product which comes to you is causing the impact. It's a lot of problem in terms of getting the real information. One is the awareness with the various members of the value chain members. Second is, in India, SMEs play a major role in your entire value chain. There's lots of competition which happens, so there is always an apprehension or skepticism. If I share this information, how do my business be protected? So, like the earlier panel which you talked about, partnership. So that has got a certain time actually. So when you're actually having a business responsibility reporting, we should first look within rather than immediately going into out of your control area or out of your fence area. This is one important area which I want to touch upon. The rest of things maybe as other panel members talk, we can actually involve in that. Thank you for the time.
While I was not part of the conference call earlier, just before the session started, we had a little chat amongst ourselves. And first thing I like about this particular aspect, I'll start with that it's voluntary. In the earlier session, I had mentioned, as soon as you make it a regulation, the tendency is to either, as Sunil said, that let us do a checklist and tick the boxes, or avoid it somehow or the other. So as long as the corporates view this as part of their responsibility and it is voluntary, I think it's going to work. There's one particular point which I was raising with Mr. Sundaresan, which seems to have either been left out or missed out, which whatever, I think he'll be able to explain or give us some idea about it, is that when we are looking at public limited companies, where there's a stakeholder is fine, environment is a stakeholder, there's so many stakeholders. But stakeholder, the public shares that are held, or the bank financing which has come in, how is it being protected? Currently, there is no guideline which is available to the corporates to see or ensure the protection of that. Latur earthquake is a case in point where bank finance, I am taking a smaller example, bigger examples would be the corporates. Bank finance was given, bank finance invariably is public money for building and construction of houses and apartments. The way the bank views the funding is that Dr. Ram Babu has to put in 20% of his own money, 80% is the loan. And as long as the property is insured for that 80% value, the bank is happy. they forget that the insurance laws and the way the insurance operates worldwide is there's some self-insurance, there's depreciation. So at the end of the day, at the end of the Gujarat earthquake and Latur earthquake, a lot of banks lost money because these buildings collapsed. The owner was not in a position to pay, the insurer couldn't pay because of the values. I am no votary of insurance, but I think that is one transfer of risk which has to be very carefully viewed by organizations like SEBI for the corporates where there's the possibility of large losses taking place, and thereby the current reporting guidelines do not provide for that. I don't think I'll spend more time, but I will just leave this thought in Mr. Sundaresan's mind, and I'm sure that further action will be taken on this issue. Thank you.
I would also like to congratulate Dr. Rambabu for this excellent initiative. This is one of the rarest occasions where the hardcore accountants have started sharing the platform with sustainability experts. So this is one of the rarest occasions, and it is also a pointer to the emerging scenario that accountancy profession cannot be isolated, nor it can distance itself from the sustainability reporting environment. Now, I represent one grouping called International Federation of Accountants, which some of you or many of you may not be aware of. This International Federation of Accountants is the highest body in the accountancy profession globally, representing 150 countries roughly. And there are various boards and committees. One board issues auditing and assurance standards like this. In this, there is one committee which represents more than half of the accountants worldwide, not in practice, but in working inside business. Like they are not in public practice, but they work inside the business. There is one committee for them which brings out the role of this side of the accountancy profession, what they should do for the various aspects of business or in government environment in the days to come. I am in that committee representing this particular region. Now, this particular committee has brought out a lot of publications, and it is also demarcating what is the role which the accountancy profession will have to play. One such publication is what I want to anchor for a few minutes by also bringing it to the knowledge of the fellow panelists as well as the chairman of the session, coming from a very powerful regulatory role. This publication is released just last year, mid of last year. What is the ESG information which the investors demand, and what is the role of the accountancy profession? It's a specific publication on this particular site. Very broadly, this particular technical document of our committee to which I belong to starts with what is the pull of the ESG information globally and what are all the signals for that. Two important signals which was also articulated by Neha. One is more and more people are signing up for these principles of responsible investment of the UN Charter. So that means the investments, the funds which are going to be available for emerging economies would all look for responsible investment proposals. And hence, there is a need for the accountancy profession to link up with that. Second, the increasing number of shareholder resolutions worldwide in the corporate sector, which are happening on the responsibilities of the governing bodies on long-term sustainable competitive advantage and what they should do. So these two important signals have been pointed out by this publication that the accountancy profession can no longer remain aloof. Now, having said this, there are two specific directives where the accountancy profession can look for at an anchoring role. Number one, they have a very key role to play in defining the key performance indicators. In this particular publication, a list of performance indicators where the accountants can play directly a role by not for simply reporting. Here I align with Mr. Sunil. If you look at the task force which I am chairing, it is not about reporting. The role of the accountants in promoting sustainability of the organization, not sustainability reporting. Sustainability of the organization and integrated thinking and not integrated reporting. This is the name of the task force I chair. So in this context, this document brings out what are all the key performance indicators which a professional accountant working inside a company should think of being a part of generating that information representing the sustainable performance, and how this aligns with the GRI indicators framework. This document speaks of that accountants have a role in that. Second, it also tells how these things are going to figure in the financial valuation of the enterprise. So financial valuation, which was more, we are familiar with the earnings, long-term earnings and things like that, is now going to be factored with the ESG factors. So I place the ESG factors along with the earnings and then look at the strategic financial outcomes in the days to come and then do a financial valuation of an enterprise which are articulated along with the sustainability factors. So for these two reasons, the accountancy profession will have to play a very powerful role by working inside the business. I am not talking of auditing per se. I am talking of basically promoting the performance in relation to sustainability. Here, I'll come to the last part of my initial articulation. 5 important areas this publication speaks of to its own accountancy brethren worldwide as well as the corporate sector. Hey, look, these areas you people get going and develop competency, as you have a great role to play in the days to come. These 5 roles are, the first one, the accountants are expected to play a major role in engaging with the stakeholders as to what sort of ESG information they will be looking for. So unless and until the accounting community is also part of the stakeholder engagement process in finding out what the stakeholder requires, you cannot incorporate it into the performance management framework of an organization. So the accountants, like me, working in the business, not in practice, should look at what the stakeholders will require in terms of ESG information and how that is going to drive my role inside the organization. Second, besides this participation in the stakeholder engagement process, once I have a feel of what sort of ESG information is going to be demanded by the investors, then I should also ensure how these things are embedded into the governance structure and the accountability structures of the organization. Like, for example, was there a business case determined earlier for sustainability? Whether sustainability has been embedded into the business case, what sort of governance structures are existing inside in the overall governance framework, which we should ensure they call for this sort of information. Like, I have a remuneration committee, I have an audit committee, filana, all the compliance related is not enough. Whether the governance structure also looks into performance, sustainability, performance related information, right from embedding into a business case. When a committee is looking at a capital investment proposal or a project, that committee at the governance level should also ensure that these factors are embedded right from the beginning. This is the second one. Accountants should participate in making the governance structures and accountability structures robust with sustainability issues. Third, the accountants, the most important, should play a major role in linking the financial performance and the non-financial factors. So the non-financial factors which have been identified as a part of the ESG should be placed along with the financial outcomes. If there is going to be a major risk possibly on account of a Latour-like syndrome or something relating to a crop pest attack in some of the fields which ITC is developing in its tobacco or the paper related area, if there is going to be a likelihood pest attack because of some cycle or some risk factor, what will be the financial outcome on a long-term sustainable basis? It may not come in the debits and credits of an organization because the financial accounting systems represent accrual entries only. This goes beyond that. So that is why we are using the word financial outcomes. So the financial outcomes of an organization and the sustainability factors need to be placed one-to-one. This is what is called as a connected information emergence. So this is the third important role. And once I have all this, accountants play a very major role in ensuring that the material information which are relevant for the stakeholders identified in first stage are properly measured and a timely way reported to the stakeholders so that there is no dearth of appropriate information for the stakeholders. So ensuring the reporting. And lastly, internally inside an organization, organize those processes, whether it is ERP driven or non-ERP driven, create those robust processes which pull that relevant data and information from the various pockets of a company's system and channelize it towards a sustainable strategy of the organization. These 5 major roles have been identified in this technical document. It will be my pleasure to forward the soft copy of this document to chairman as well as other panelists and all those who want this document through Dr. Rambabu, I can do that. Now, this is beside the public accounting role of an auditing professional in the accounting, in the sustainability or the audit of non-financial information. There, the IFAC body, what I represent, another committee, another board called Auditing and Assurance Standards Board, they have issued ISAE 3600, which calls for certain principles which need to be adopted in the assurance engagement, which are connected with the assessment or audit or verification of the non-financial information. Now, these things are becoming popular, but finally, to top all this, the accounting community, IFAC, has come together with stakeholders to evolve what is called the integrated reporting framework. Now, this integrated reporting framework in another decade or so will have its full form, be the overarching reporting framework of the corporate sector, which will be pillared, which will have not pilloried, pillared by the IFRS accounting standard framework, sustainability framework of GRA emerging, and at least as far as we are concerned, a decade to go. But at least the SEBI step of mandating this is a real way forward, ultimately when the integrated reporting comes. With these words, I conclude this part. Thank you.
Mr. Raman, it was really at least I can openly admit that it was a good learning for me to know how important this integrated accounting is. I mean, maybe some people in SEBI may be aware of it, but it's an opportunity for me to learn from you so that I in turn share with some of my colleagues who are also part of the team working on this. Now, can I request Mr. Santosh Jairam to share his views on these challenges in auditing such sustainability reporting and business responsibility reporting?
Well, thank you very much for giving this opportunity, and congratulations to SEBI because it gives a good business opportunity for people like us as well. But having that's on the lighter side, but when I look into this, although I represent KPMG, which is better known in the financial world and the accounting world, I'm not an accountant by profession. I am from the sustainability world, the sustainability auditing field, which in the first session talked about a 60 billion, which makes me look small, but I see that as an opportunity to expand my portfolio. So you are seeing how a firm like KPMG is integrating the sustainability professionals into the mainstream services. So that's kind of things which are happening. We would be one of the leaders in India when it comes to the assurance of the sustainability reports. We have in India closely about 70-80 reports currently coming out, and almost about 70% of the reports are externally assured. And some of the key critical things we have seen and which we think would be very important for you to consider when we are starting with the business responsibility report. I would just say I have about 4 points which I have noted down. One is the completeness of the report. The way we are seeing currently, the sustainability reporting is a voluntary thing. Now we are moving into a regulatory realm, so the completeness becomes very critical. Earlier they had a choice to report. Many companies report our only India operations. There are companies who say that only 100% owned, no subsidiaries covered. There are some people say no joint venture covered, subsidiaries partly covered. So if you look at the sustainability reporting space, there is a wide variety of boundary setting for the report. Okay, but that moving into a regulatory framework, that's critical. I mean, we need to take a note of that because what is the threshold to define that particular boundary of reporting? That we need to be clear. Again, I mean, a company like ITC. Of course, they are kind of in multi-area or a conglomerate kind of a setup. If an organization is in a conglomerate kind of a setup, when you look into the National Voluntary Guidelines, the 9 principles, the way in which the principles will play in the various sectors where they operate is going to be different. Now, in a single report, how do they bring that out? again, there is a boundary setting issue which would come out. So we have a big challenge when it comes to the boundary. And one very valid point, again, in terms of boundary, which Sunil brought out, was the value chain. To what extent? I mean, where do you draw the line? To which extent you can go in terms of reporting on the value chain? So if somebody gives me a business responsibility report to do an assurance, I have this biggest challenge, because currently the regulators have not said what it is. The second one is in terms of accuracy and reliability of information. I mean, look at it. The financial auditing world has evolved over the decades, and even today, I won't say that it's perfect. So the sustainability reporting side is kind of a very infant when it comes to that. So the accuracy of the information, the reliability of the information is one of the challenges which we face. The next one is the biggest one. It is related to comparability. Now, why do you report? So people who read the report can use this information in the right form. If I'm an analyst, if I want to compare company A and B, it should be possible. I can tell you with my experience, I work with almost the top, all the IT firms in this country on this particular space, and I can give by personal experience a simple parameter on sustainability like energy consumed per capita. Company A, it adds all the energy consumed throughout the year divided by the number of employees on the 31st of March. That's one figure. Company B says, I recruit more than 25,000 people in a year. So if I take the denominator as the 31st of March, it is not right. So they do a weighted average across months and they report. Company 3 says, almost 20% of my employees are offshore. They don't use my premises. So they minus that from the denominator and you have again the same parameter. Now the company 4 says, okay, more than my employees, there are many others who use my facility. So I use the swipe data as to number of people use my facility at the denominator. Now you see a single parameter in the same, how can you compare this? So the comparability is a big issue when it comes to the public domain information. Next is the neutrality of the report. Sad to say, but I have to do this. Even today, these reports are looked as PR exercises. Look at what has happened in Odisha in terms of the fines and instituted and all. Look at the reports of many of the companies involved. How many of them talk about it? So when you publish a report, it has to be the kinds of, it should cover the whole spectrum of the issues which you are involved with. So these are the kind of 4 main challenges which we see when we come across assurance of the sustainability report. I will end by saying also, I was, as Neha said, I mean, for a little bit, I was also involved in terms of the stakeholder engagement of the National Voluntary Guidelines development. And when it was developed, it was very clear that we were looking at a more principle-oriented approach, which gives enough leverage for people to really realize those principles and put what is material out there in the report. But when I looked into the circular which came from SEBI, at the end of it, there was a template. Now, moving a principle-oriented guideline into a template-based approach, I'm not too sure how, because it's kind of a little tick box kind of a thing which would start, maybe it's good to start with, maybe it's easier for people to fill it in, but I think going forward we should see how we will evolve that particular template as well. So that's it from my side as an opening remark. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Santosh. Now, before we move on to the next issue of education of the stakeholder, I just want to draw your attention why this stakeholder education is very important. I came across a recent study on the by the Center for Science and Environment. In its, I think a report came about 2 to 3 months back on the green rating of iron and steel sector. It categorically named one listed entity and it said there is a dismal environmental performance of this entity. Now, how many people took that report or finding seriously? When Mr. Sunil Kumar talked about somebody who is complying, how it should be incentivized, somebody who is non-compliant, never raised what type of, sort of a punishment or a disincentive for that. When we talk about that, as a regulator, we feel marketplace is the right place to incentivize or to punish the entity. And that is why when a company gets listed, the best barometer of that company's performance, not only on financial aspects, whether it is a social, whether it is environmental, whether it is any sort of compliance as a whole, as a society at large, marketplace is the right place to teach them a lesson, good as well as bad. But when this report came, let me tell you very honestly, there was hardly any movement in the market price of that particular script. What my, conclusion at that point of time and even as of now today is that two. One, nobody bothered to see that report or what is impact of that. Or most of us who are familiar with this issue saw it and they have not understood or they simply ignored it. If that is the situation, I think stakeholders' education assumes a lot more significance than what we would like to think at normal level. Now I request Mr. Girish Joshi, who is, he is actually the monitor of the marketplace, the stock exchange, and I would like to request him to say how they are planning to educate and then how to make this more popular among the people, and so that, it serves the purpose for which it is meant for. As other people said, everybody puts in so much of effort in bringing out something good or something bad in a particular sustainability report. But then who is going to see that? Who is going to evaluate it? Who is going to make use of it? Otherwise, as he said, it will also remain like one more report, which is filed with some of the organizations. So let us look for some, forward-thinking views from Mr. Girish.
Gentlemen, I thank General Carbon, Mr. Ram Babu and his team, Mr. Sundareshan and my other colleagues on the panel. Some of the points, generally they have been discussed about reporting, how to do reporting, role of accountants, how the guidelines philosophically they were perceived. But as Mr. Sundareshan said, ultimately, who is going to use it? There are what Sundareshan has pointed out, the investors, users. Now, when we say there are stakeholders and investors, or stakeholders, we have various kinds of stakeholders. The first one is the consumer, who is going to buy the product of that company. And Mr. Sunil from ITC really pointed out that what is the incentive for the company to do that? If I charge 1 paisa more or 5 paisa more, someone is going to pay me, because I have to compete with my organized competitor, and I say there are many unorganized players also in the market for whom it is not mandated. So this is one important stakeholder, consumer. Second important stakeholder is, I would say, the industry, banks who are lending. They are lending money to this company. Are they incentivizing? If some company has taken some steps, to go in a right business spirit, okay, let me do this, there is some extra cost. Whether banks are actually taking conscious call, let me charge 5 basis point, 10 basis point less to this company, I learn less, but this company is doing good for the society or for overall sustainability. These are other stakeholders. Another stakeholder is your employees. Another stakeholder is your suppliers and your distributors. These are important stakeholders in a sense because they also supply so many things to this main company or the main conglomerate. And if that company comes into trouble, they are also in trouble. Whether they are being well informed or well educated. We have heard a famous case of a company which was there in West Bengal and they were forced to move out. If vendors or other people would have set up the plant, okay, I will supplying to this company, and if that company is out, then their fortune is, they have to put a lot of money. So they are also suppliers of that company, main company. Now distributors also. Sometimes distributors also face a challenge because companies in certain line of business, overnight some ban comes from a state government, you can't distribute this, and they are in the value chain. They also suffer. So all the stakeholders' interest when you embed it in your business model, and that information is being displayed and everyone reads the same information in the same page, that's the challenge in the terms of education. Now, of course, stock exchange has limited role because we have agreement with the company, they are listed with us. We have certain clauses in listing agreement, companies are supposed to comply. Like one of the important is governance. Clause 49 takes care of all governance issue. But in terms of E and S, in those, there are no mandatory requirement. Now, in that spirit, I would say BSE as an exchange has make some small step. Not like we cannot act as a value judgment. This company is right or this company is wrong because it is like requirement of this company because there are voluntary guidelines. They are as long as business responsibility reporting or sustainability is not mandatory, it is now being enforced. So some companies have started doing this. So we want to at least make showcase for such company. They are going good. They are going good. We have made one index called BSE Green Index. We have launched this index in February 2012. It was inaugurated by Dr. Virappa Moili. And there we have taken something which is disclosed in the public domain. No, if you it's too technical, I don't want to say, but some companies are, there is a Form A in the director's report, companies are supposed to disclose their energy consumptions. So we have done partnership with our technical partner and some modeling is applied and we have find out the greenhouse gas emission of top 100 companies and we have launched this index and top 20 companies we have displayed on the website. So at least these are the leaders in the greenhouse gas emission. This is one index we have launched. Another index which are in the process of launching along with the British High Commission, we are going to call it BSE Carbon Index, BSE Carbonex. Now this index in a sense, like the first index takes more quantitative measures, the second index which takes care of this entire SR or ESG model of the company. Here we are also going to take top 100 companies and there we will do the modeling or scoring of the company based on 4 main parameters. What is the governance structure? Governance structure and sustainability reporting, how it is being emphasized in the overall company's business model. And there we are giving some 40% weightage. 30% weightage we are giving to reporting and disclosures. How company has done the disclosures of all these parameters in their annual report. Of course, this index we have started in last July 2012. Now SEBI guidelines have come. So everything now will be available in public domain. So how much is available in public domain? How much they have done reporting and disclosure? So there we are giving 30% weightage. These two, we are giving more weightage to first two because these are more broad policy matter. 20% weightage we are giving into performance. See, we are not reached to that level. The company will say, this is my target and I'll reduce this much by so many percentage. That information has to come in public domain and has to be as weighted by assurance. It has to be assured by the accountant or eminent experts. So if some companies are giving this information, those companies will score better and there we are giving 20% weight. And 10% weight we are giving to ecosystem. The point which I would touch upon in the beginning, your stakeholders. All the stakeholders who are affected your business model, how you transfer your business model in such a way that they are also being forced to adopt that model. Currently we are giving 10% weightage because it is called scope 3 in terms of this language which people, professionals in sustainability, they use the word scope 3. The scope 3 we have taken 10% weight because that information is yet to come in the public domain. So on that basis, we'll launch, we'll give the weightage to the companies, and whatever market capitalization will be tilted based on their carbon factor. So that first step all BSE has done. We are also in the process of doing some portal. Now this is a portal which we want to develop, means we are also in touch with ZIZ, where no, they can also provide some technical help. This portal will try to give all sustainability, like what Mr. Sundaresan said, if where this information is available, if I want to see how to analyze this information, what are the basic parameters? Like for financial reporting, we have basic parameter, earning per shares, dividend yield, your PE ratio, forward PE ratio. We cannot apply same straight away those principles into this, because these companies are having different business model. Some are conglomerates, some have all various lines of business. But we want to put all this information sector-wise in this portal, so someone can see that information and try to take some view on that company, whether what company is doing right or wrong. But it will be available and it will be useful to the government and other regulatory organization who are working on this. Now my only humble request is it should not be tick box. It should be like a true business model embedded in your entire practices and policies. And if that comes, then naturally we'll have a lot of, as you say, our growth, what Mr. Rambabu said, we will have green growth for the Indian economy, and we want, as a BSE also want to support that. So I close this my remark. Thank you very much.
Girish. Now I request the panelists to, if they want to add anything, they can, in a couple of minutes, each one of us, each one of them can share their views, and then thereafter we can throw the session for public, for the audience questions, if any.
I would just like to take this opportunity to put on the table that all of these thoughts are actually on the table for discussion. And the way we are, basically I think it comes down to, I heard everybody, to 2 or 3 points. I would like to begin from the question of trust. And public information goes beyond business case. And when we really talk about growth and business performance, as we saw in your AVID, the trust between business and people has to be enhanced. And I think information provides that route that the trust can be enhanced. And when it is trust, it also, like we heard, it is all about changing the mindset and behavior. And I would tend to agree with Mr. Sundaresan that market is that place where final decisions will be made. But in order to create those conditions in the market, there need to be some sort of a balanced mix between regulatory measures, between voluntary measures, and we don't say that we have the right model right now. I think this is a part of the evolution. And when I talk about evolution, I would like to respond to Santosh's comment that the national voluntary guidelines are looked at more principle-based document, while the disclosure framework is a template. Somewhere you have to begin. Somewhere you have to tell the businesses how these principles can be translated into action. And if you want to call yourself a responsible business, please tell us that at least these are the things that you're doing. The question from Sunil from ITC, I think these are very relevant questions. Are we in a position to trace the entire value chain right away? Where is the boundary? The disclosure framework and the NVGs are a very, very forward-looking document. And that is why in them, there is a clause of apply or explain. That they say that if you're not ready today, please tell us what are the reasons why you're not ready. Are you not aware? Do you not have the wherewithal? Are you planning to make such a report next year? So my conclusion from this discussion is definitely there has to be much more awareness, much more education of that this reporting is not a compliance exercise, that is not the intent of the government, that is not the intent of the stakeholders, but how do you make it truly of value for businesses themselves, so that financial and non-financial performance become become a common practice. Reporting becomes non-financial reporting becomes a common practice. And like Mr. Raman said, that integrated reporting, if not today, it is a matter of time. It may take 5 to 10 years, but it will be there. And there are steps on that globally. And this business reporting, I think we should see as a preparation to that eventual stage where we have understood how to understand non-financial parameters, how to report on them. And we do have some time, and I think India is taking a very good step. One more thing that I wanted to bring to your notice is that annual business responsibility report, it is also in alignment with section number 135 of Companies Bill, which also looks at CSR. CSR, the way it is, I mean, it is different, but it can be seen as a part of the overarching umbrella of business report. And the effort is to keep the reporting framework a single reporting framework right now. Otherwise, having too many things would be problematic. Discussions are going on, a lot of thoughts are there. So while there are sort of, I would not even call them problems, these are flags. And all of these flags have to be addressed. And the government is taking a very proactive role in facilitating this dialogue. So I'm very happy again to be here to take all of this back and also to engage with not only so many people in the audience, but also these panelists, because a lot of dialogue and conversation is required on all of these matters. Thank you. I hope I have been able to clarify some of these things. The one more thing which is important in India's case is that 2/3 of our businesses are family owned. So the balance between self-regulation and regulation is very, very important, because it finally comes down to what one man, what the leader of the business actually thinks. So this is, and we are actually right now conducting a study on exactly how do these things make an impression or impact integration of sustainability and responsibility at the board level. So a lot of these things are going on, and we are in the process of, say, creating that knowledge. I think knowledge dissemination is, we come down to it, is critically important to mainstream it. Thank you.
Just to add, the fellow panelists already talked about, just to want to touch upon 2 points which was raised. One is on the boundary of reporting. If you're looking at internationally also, there are various frameworks like GRA and other mechanism talks about the materiality principle to apply that. But now when you come to talk about on ESG on a value chain, and whereas in your financial or economic performance, you are limiting yourself to your own company's performance. So there is always a conflict when you are actually going to drive your sustainability performance, which is basically a triple bottom line performance. So there has to be a similar lines of thinking in terms of boundary of reporting. So there has to be some direction in terms of what is a materiality principle to be applied. There is a well-established principle which has already been followed in the accounting and financial system. So that has to be get correlated, because otherwise what happens, there is always a mismatch between the information which financial system is coming out as well as sustainability reporting or other, because these are two different sets of people who actually drive within the organization. So it's only now coming to the stage that, as Mr. Raman said, the accountants people as well as the other sustainability professionals are coming together. So that is one aspect which I want to say. Second is, as Mr. Sundaresan said, I totally agree with you. Market is the place where it is going to be rewarded or incentivized. Today, Indian market has not really come to the stage. I can give you n number of examples. I don't want to quote from that. When there are disclosures which comes out very openly, say we have a certain scientific mechanism to disclose, this is what we actually fund, so and so, so and so. The response which is coming either from media or from others, you see how arrogant this organization. They do this and they disclose also. But these are all certain things where market is not matured. So when the market is not matured, when you are actually bringing out such strong mechanisms, it has to be a progressive way of implementation, as any guidelines or any voluntary guidelines we talks. But definitely it's a starting point, because as she was mentioning, there has to be a template to start with, at least to certain organization which they are not fully involved in that. So these are the just 2 points which I thought. And third point is on education and awareness. That's a very important aspect. If market has to actually appreciate, or market has to actually incentivize you, the market should know what is its implication, what should know. There, in terms of your awareness, building up the consumers, the first and foremost, actually, the consumer awareness in those aspects have to be built up. There, government. See, for example, I just ask one simple, question, which always it comes to that. We always talk about very environmental performance or social performance, but when it comes to the buying decision, forget about the retailers or forget about the consumers, even at the major government or corporates, do we really, because we all travel a lot, do we really travel, or whenever we go to a destination, stay in a LEED certified hotel, which is supposed to be more energy efficient and better? Or do we actually choose the products which are environmentally better prepared in terms of stationery, paper, whatever? Is that point has actually come in, even because public sector, government regulatory bodies, all those has got a major role to play. They also have a very good consumption. So somewhere it has to start. So then it will be actually trickled down at various levels. So these are the few thoughts I thought I would bring in. Thank you.
An immediate rejoinder to what Sunil said, he hit the nail on the head. The financial accounting community, transactions reporting, the assets, liabilities, revenue, expenses stop with the entity. You don't go into the recording and reporting of the value chains transactions. Whereas sustainability reporting's boundary goes beyond that. This is fundamentally a conflict between the financial accounting gamut and the sustainability reporting gamut, which we have also articulated very powerfully from India's response to integrated reporting done by us, as well as in the committee where we are articulating. But this is being addressed in the integrated reporting framework, and that is coming in the form of different forms of capital, 6 forms of capital, like the shareholder and the financial institutions provide financial resources, nature provides so much, society provides so much, 6 forms of capital, and how the sustainability is going to impact on that. Some very good ideas have come up, but as I said, it's a very long way, and we have to travel miles and miles to reach to that.
Just a small thing, because people have been talking about the market. So yesterday, as part of one of the panels, when I showed the performance of the sustainability leaders against the sustainability laggards from the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, which very clearly shows the kind of variation in terms of the performance of the companies. And especially post 2008, you will find the gap widening. And even if you look at the S&P ESG index, which has been institutionalized in 2008, that index very clearly shows that index is outperforming the normal Nifty by more than 50%. Continuously, post 2008. We are clearly seeing but I would say I wouldn't dwell much into it, because we have closely about a 30% churn in that index. But look at Dow Jones, where it is less than a 10% churn, but still we can very clearly show how the leaders differentiate in terms of the market value. Plus, we have also done some studies in terms of when the news hits an environmental issue or a social issue or a worker-related issue hits the mainstream media, how the market valuation is happening. It is happening. We have seen in India as well. We have even seen within 2 days the share price of that particular organization dropping by more than half when such news hits the main media. So there is market reactions happening, but it is not to the retail investors kind of level. I think we have to move from that institutional investing to the retail investing, the capacity building, and those kind of things. Thank you.
I would just like to react to what Neha said about more than 60% of the businesses are held family-owned. I have been involved in one such case. Yes, there is a single decision maker, but as long as you're able to convince that decision maker, the trickle down takes place. That is the message, and it's easy to do that, but it's time consuming. It took me 5 years.
Yeah, I would also say because experience which I would share, when we are constructing the index which we want to roll out by end of December, this carbon index. So top 100 companies which we are targeting, so we have called them, we have approached them, we have sent the questionnaires. So out of 100 companies, 60 companies have responded. So that is the state of these are top 100 companies. If these top 100 companies, only 60 companies are responding, so now we have to bring this culture value to top 5,000 listed companies. So it's a big movement. We all have to support, and it's a long journey. It cannot come overnight. And sometimes companies say, what is the reward for us? No, many good houses I cannot name, they have not appointed head of sustainability. I say, so you appoint someone head of sustainability. If you are not able to understand, we'll talk to them, because you will not understand my language. But they don't know, what is this? We don't have that concept of head of sustainability. You talk to my company secretary, you talk to my CFO. Now, they have limitation to appreciate this. No, and I'll add, Mr. Raman said, no, finance person has a different concept, because he is more on historical reporting, and sustainability is more forward-looking reporting. So this is would say process which we have to make a long journey. And internationally, it is not, I would say, no, they are far ahead. They are also catching up. Like this concept is more popular in Europe and UK. It is less popular in US. And even Europe and UK, there are many sustainable funds. They are called SRI funds. They are huge dollars. They put millions of dollars. There are pension funds. They only target these companies, which have sustainable business model, and money flows. And I just want to share these top 100 companies, which are now of these 60 companies which have some positive framework. They are all international presence, and they are being given pressure internationally. That's why they have a business model. There is no domestic incentive to do this, just to be very frank, because they have exposure to international markets. They are exporting, so they should not get, they want to be visible. They are doing something globally. That's why this pressure is coming internationally. Now, fortunately, now SEBI has started, so now some domestic pressure is also there, and we need domestic fund houses, mutual funds, insurance companies, banks to put that equal pressure on the local companies. So if pressure comes on both sides, then the entire business model will have SR as a main theme.
Considering the time constraint, because we are close to 1 o'clock and there is one more session after this, and so your lunch will get delayed beyond what you could expect. So I will request that maximum 3 questions can be asked, so that, because of the time. Otherwise, I have no problem in staying back and answering your questions, and I hope my panelists will agree to that. Okay, let us start with the first row.
Thank you. Thank you for your very interesting input and discussions. I am Sriranga and I work for Fairtrade International. My question is on the consumer awareness and education. It is not just a challenge for Indian businesses, but it's a global challenge that every even matured market, everybody faces, especially value action gap. Even if consumer has a value to do something to the sustainability and to the social initiatives and the action, there is always a gap between what they say they want to do and what they actually do. My question is, whose role do you think it is to educate the consumers and the businesses? Because it's a humongous challenge, and even in any kind of environment, especially in India with such a diverse range of population and diverse, and also the way retail and distribution is organized in India.
I could respond to that question. So right now, the focus of IICA is that for next 2 years, they will go into advocacy and capacity development of these catalytic organizations. So we have identified constituencies, and consumer constituency is a priority constituency also. So a lot of awareness generation, a lot of advocacy and education of these organizations, because they can play a role of then further taking up. So it is not only consumer, it is financial institutions, banks, investment funds, like we were talking about, government itself, consumer organizations, B schools. So I'm talking about all of these multiplier institutions where these things have to get integrated. So ISA is taking upon itself in the next 2 years, and then I think once the dialogue is set into motion, there will be organizations which will be able to take this role up. But definitely this is one of the action points.
I just want to add, we are the driver, but I would say our next generation is a driver for this movement, because they are learning this in the school and colleges. So they know which product to buy and when to buy. So and I would say it's a time of 10 years. After 10 years, these people who have come from the school, they'll be the biggest consumers, and they will drive the market.
I'm DGM CSR from State Bank of India. So my question is that actually, as far as banks, that relates to what Mr. Girish Joshi was telling, that banks are one of the stakeholders who should push the initiatives. So here my question is simple, that in many of these forums, and I find one thing, that the Reserve Bank of India, normally it is missing. I don't know why. So is it being pushed with Reserve Bank of India, so that our controller is Reserve Bank, and if they, they can, persuade us to move ahead with all these things. So is it being, any steps being taken in that direction?
So I think, sir, we have priority sector guidelines but that is only for certain sectors.
Yeah, that is right. RBI, I'm not talking about the initiatives. Initiatives are already being taken by banks, and there are a lot of initiatives that we are taking. But pushing the sustainability reporting part of it is concerned, the only circular which had come out from RBI, in my understanding, maybe I don't know if I missed something, it is of 2007, where non-financial reporting circular is there. After that, I didn't find any other circular. So is there something missing in pushing the...
I think it happens from both sides. As you rightly said, RBI came out with this recommendation for all banks in India in 2007. And if you look at that, it is a very big document. It talks about sustainability reporting right in 2007. It talks about carbon. It talks about ESG inclusion into your project financing. It talks about equator principles. At that banks, there were events conducted. The bank fraternity completely opposed the adoption of equator principles at that time to RBI. And there was also an opinion that if you, as a banking fraternity, do not want to take equator principles, why don't we evolve something for India? Which was agreed upon, but no movement happened from that. So if you want to have the movement, it has to be from both sides. RBI has done its part a little, but the reaction from the other side was very lukewarm.
Maybe I could add something to that. Now this is how dialogues mature. So we started talking to banks about 3 years back, and it is only now that they have been coming slowly on board, SBI being one of them, SIDBI being one of them. And in fact, and I have to say, the good trigger that SEBI has provided into the whole ecosystem is that now RBI, this is a study that I know of, actually wanted to assess the practices of banks in India on this. Because after SEBI came out, they were also kind of sitting up and taking notice. So these dialogues are taking place, and again, the role that IIC and GIZ are playing in this field, I would just want to, we are getting these stakeholders together. So when I say that advocacy and capacity development of multiplier institutions, that has banks in it. So in fact, a very senior person from Indian Banking Association is on our advisory group. And so this is basically that one step forward in that direction, that we are trying to gain from them. What do they think are the bottlenecks to really tide over and to integrate? So it will happen. It is probably slow, but at the same time, I will have to say that in the last 4 or 5 years, the kind of progress that we have seen this in India, It is truly and objectively speaking quite exemplary, and the progress is being also seen by international community, because India happens to be the only nation which has such a comprehensive set of guidelines. There are other nations, there is a national initiative in Indonesia, and I think France, there is something as part of legislation also. So, but progress is there, we have to move along, and step by step, yes.
I am Parthiv Parikh. By profession, I am Company Secretary from Ahmedabad. My question is, where an industrial house having more than 2-3 companies, all are coming under top 100 as per the SEBI, or sorry, BSE and NSE listing. So in that case, if they have some trust or some foundation and CRS activities are being carried out through this trust or foundation, then how the company is required to report as per the SEBI format?
Sir, this I think I also want Sundaresh also to respond. But the SEBI guidelines, this point was also raised in, I think, when we conducted workshop in BSE for and called the companies. So that time SEBI official said these are voluntary guideline. Company is to give in a right spirit. It is left to the management of the company how they are following these practices. If the trust is under the company and company is fully owner of that trust, so you can.
It is a part of the group.
But sir, as you say, it should not be compliance oriented. It should be more business oriented. No, like because if just you are complying the guideline because one of your trust is doing, but if company can do more, then naturally I think we should drive for that.
Sir. One more thing, sir. Is there any auditing or reliability, just like in the case of corporate governance, you have to get it audited by some practicing CS or auditor. So is this information what the company is providing, are some certification or some sort of audit certificate is required?
We mulled over this point before issuing the circular. We consciously decided to begin with not to bring any external agency to what you call certify or say that examining what has been reported, because since it has been mandated to the top listed 500 companies, we expect that their own management will be independent enough, having external people to, as he said, to come out and clearly specify what they actually wanted to specify, rather than using this as a tick mark, box ticking exercise. So it was a conscious decision by SEBI not to bring in the external agency to any mandatory auditing. And just here one more point I would like to clarify, that we also discussed about the providing a structured format vis-a-vis keeping it open for the companies or the corporations to disclose the way they want, with the intention that since we are not providing any external agency to audit it, and in order to ensure that there is information is coming in a comparable format. That was the main reason why this structured format has been provided. Once few reports are received, it will be examined either by SEBI or by the stock exchanges or a consortium of people who are familiar with this exercise. Based on the outcome we get, whether these reports are being, filed as a matter of compliance or it's really bringing out something, and thereafter the next step would be taken as to whether to mandate it further, whether to improvise the reporting structure, whether to involve more, bring more principles into that, or provide more clarifications. To begin with, and as a regulator, as a capital market regulator, whenever we introduce something, we first trust the people whom we are regulating. If the trust level is not raised to the bar which we expect, then all these mandatory things will stop. So to begin with, we are not expecting anybody to get it audited externally, but in your own interest, if you want to say that yes, what I say is not only right from my angle, but there is someone who knows this subject who can certify that, well and good.
So thanks a lot for the answering the second question, which I wanted to ask anyway. This was the assurance what I want to ask, and how therefore we do it with either a third party or a self-assurance, like you, what you rightly said to start with, and therefore that goes back to the topic of trust, what you rightly said. The second question pertains to you, Girish, is this, I just got this circular 2 days back on this Green X, and by 12th we need us to comply with, and that's pretty a tough target. And also, I want to know whether it's as of now mandatory, or it should be, we can probably give it. Part B is, you also mentioned that once you're given it, within 6 months you've got to send an audited report. Now, therefore, this goes, I won't say contrary, but this is a little bit different.
So this index, which I think you would have received on mail for on carbon offset. See,
Green X.
Green X. So we have changing the methodology. So
Okay.
we have debate with the people of like mandate, and we said let us give credit for carbon offset. Some people do the other activity. For that, we have given mandate to those 100 companies. It is our internal process, nothing to do with the SEBI.
Yeah, I know, but the disclosure
Because see, I want my index to have more reliability to the international investor.
Okay.
So if later on, currently as we want company to give on their own basis whatever carbon offset they claim. Later on, we may make mandatory. Okay, now let it come as an assured report.
Assured report.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
After 6 months, not now.
Thank you so much.